Welcome to Mindboost Moments, a podcast for those who want to hear from like-minded people and how they're making a dent in the world. So join me on my continued journey of learning and discovery. Today's podcast was all about the real power of community in learning and development. It was my pleasure to speak with Michael Strawbridge, Global Head of Community at the LPI. We chatted about trends, challenges and opportunities in L&D, especially around AI, collaboration and harnessing collective knowledge. We also talked about how true value comes not just from sharing resources, but from building genuine relationships, sparking curiosity and supporting one another across borders and job titles. This is Mindboost Moments.
I'm Michael Strawbridge, Global Head of Community here at the LPI, and thank you for inviting me to join the podcast. My role at the LPI really is to make sure that our members and the wider community have the resources and insights to be able to help them do their jobs more successfully. And I suppose at the end of the day, to help make learning work. And I've been involved in the industry now for, I hate to say it, 25 years plus.
Well, you and me both, actually. Maybe not quite 25 years, but getting on for a couple of decades.
Yeah.
So what I'm really keen actually to understand about what does helping a community around learning sort of look like? You know, just give us some sort of tips and insights into what that actually means.
I think what that actually means for me is, making sure our community is connected.
Yeah.
Making sure that, they have the right resources and insights in order to help them make the right decisions. I spend a lot of my time talking to practitioners, global heads of learning, etc., running various different events. So it's supporting them with all those various different conversations and challenges that they.
And have you seen any trends in some of the challenges that are coming out of organisations?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, you look at challenges that are coming out now, and some of them, have been there for a while. Things like how to support building a learning culture, leadership development. But of course, the thing that everybody's talking about at the moment and has been talking about for it feels like forever, of course, is AI in learning, what the implications are of that, how it can be used, what the ethical side of AI, etc. So that I think that's one of the biggest things that practitioners talk to me about and are sort of saying that they're struggling, not necessarily struggling with, but they're having internal conversations about what that looks like, what it might look like, and how they can harness the power that is potentially there within AI.
I mean, my viewpoint is that there's a massive potential to use AI or machine learning, however you wrap it up, to make your processes and make things more efficient, actually. I mean, the simple example of using Copilot, GPT, I use Google quite a lot actually, and just sort of talk to it, and actually that's becoming more and more human these days. But also over the weekend, like trying to visualize how something on a web page would work. Now I'm not a coder, but in a couple of hours I'd got a working prototype of a slider, changing the color of the background, pulling in an image based on a random word. And so it's quite rudimentary really, but in 2 hours, I'd got, 300 lines of code that I'd sort of just spoken to it about. So it's that sort of thing that I'm really excited about. But also, how do you balance that off with not losing the humanity in people, and that we still have these types of forums where we talk to each other, we build a community, and we listen to one another rather than just transactional all the time.
Yeah, and I think you're right with things like ChatGPT and all those things. And I'm of an age now that when that came in, I thought, oh Lord, what that's going to do. And I think I find it really useful for is I'm not very good with a blank piece of paper sometimes.
Yeah.
I can look at it and think, right, I know I need to create something or write something or whatever. Where do I start?
Yeah.
What I find really useful is, just putting a couple of prompts into something like ChatGPT or whatever, and it just gives you that basis of then to start where you can start working from.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I find really useful. So I don't get it doing my job, but I'm just giving, those prompts to make me think, well, actually, oh yeah, perhaps I need to talk about that, or I could talk about this. That's what I find it really useful for. And I think now I think we're going beyond people worrying about, am I going to lose my job? Our learning and development profession is going to, disappear, etc. I think what people are now realizing is, well, if we use it properly, it's going
Yeah.
to enhance what we're doing. And I think that goes back to what you were just saying.
Yeah, I agree actually, and I've not really thought about, because you do listen to some of the negativity, and the the initial noise was, oh, it's going to replace everyone, but I haven't thought about it recently, but I think you're right. People are now going, look at the amazing things we can create and visualize, and and explore. Like, I'm not that thing that I created over the weekend. There's no way that I'm considering going, oh, that might save me a developer, or I'm going to start learning that. It was really, how do I visualize and create a prototype so I can hand over something that's maybe
Yeah.
40% there, to go, this is what I'm thinking, and I'm really connected with this because I started the process off, but then hand it off to an expert who loves finishing it off, crafting it,
Yeah.
and knows that I'm no good at doing that sort of thing. But it's interesting. I haven't reflected on it for a while, actually, the sort of negativity of it. I think the ethical questions are still there, because we still see that a lot in social media, but the practicalities of doing stuff and thinking are sort of petering off a little bit.
Absolutely. I think people are starting. Yeah, I think it's like anything, isn't it? We all need time to reflect on whatever it is. We all thought about it when the internet started. What's it going to mean now? It's just part of our daily life now. We have to reflect
Yeah.
on it. How do we use it? And I think this is the same. The
Yeah.
ethical side of it, yes, is a worry. And I was talking to somebody a little while ago. We did an event. It must have been about 6 months ago, or whatever. And we had, one of the guests was I think her job title is Ethics Fellow at the Alan
Okay.
Turing Institute. And she was talking about, the ethics and, what you should or shouldn't put into it, etc., etc. And one thing she said to me, which keeps sticking in my mind, and I can't get it out of my mind, is she was saying, and I don't know what the answer to this is, that if we keep using, ChatGPT, AI, all those things at the rate we're using at the moment, in 2 years' time, there won't be physically enough water on the planet to cool all the systems that we will need to drive it.
Yeah.
That I find really scary.
Well, and to echo that, they're now pushing for modern nuclear power stations. So, like, forget about the old sort of nuclear where
Yeah,
you've really got to bury all the
yeah,
radioactive stuff. It's like these G5 nuclear power stations, and they're saying exactly the same, that we are going to need to roll them out en masse across the countries, because the energy consumption is exponential, and if we don't do something, we're not going to have the energy to survive with all the demands now.
yeah. It's quite phenomenal, isn't it? Something that we just sit and tap away at on our desks has all these implications,
Yeah.
globally.
But I suppose it is like anything, isn't it? We've got to start somewhere, and then because you don't know what the uptake's going to be, because it could have all fallen flat, and then nobody needed to worry about it. But actually, I mean, the reason why it is going at an exponential rate is that everyone's seeing the benefits of it, and mainly big business, and go, this is something really powerful.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, sort of just leaning into the ethics, we've been doing this for some time, sort of creating voices so we can rapidly use them in some sort of small bits of narration. And then this weekend, I just tried getting it to copy my own voice. So I'm fully subscribed on that. I agreed to it. I gave it up to 30 minutes of my own voice, and then I paired it with, another sort of fully AI created voice. And within about a minute, it created an episode of Mind Boost Moments based on me just pointing it to the Mind Boost website and giving it a recording of my voice. And it did an episode. And I was like, I just posted it to the team to say, this is absolutely wild, because I said none of this, and yet it's actually really powerful.
And does it actually sound
Yeah.
like you. It has the same inflections, all those sorts of
Yes.
things.
Yeah. So I tested it on my wife to say, have a listen to this and see if you think it's me or not. And she said, that's mad because it is you, effectively.
Yeah.
I've said none of those words, but you think it's me.
Wow.
I mean, it's sort of powerful, but also scary at the same time, isn't it? Because you know that
It's how
in
we
the wrong
use it.
hands,
It's how we
yeah,
use it, isn't it? And how we interact with it. And I think it's like anything, isn't it? It's just digging into it and having to play with stuff and just seeing what it can do, and then
yeah,
using it for how we feel it's most appropriate for, for ourselves personally, our businesses or whatever. That's
yeah.
really interesting. I'll have to play with that myself now.
I know. I mean, 11 Labs I used, and I, created that voice from myself, and I was sort of blown away. Really, I know the power of 11 Labs and
Yeah,
using the voice cloning, but just the curiosity got the better of me, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll just create a podcast episode, and I thought, oh my god, this is amazing.
that is interesting.
Yeah, I'd give it a go. Yeah, definitely. But I asked you a couple of questions before the poddy, didn't I? And I didn't want you to overthink this. So everyone comes on and I've been thinking about this. I didn't want you to overthink it. But my first my first question was, what excites you, makes you fizz with energy, and basically gets you out of bed each day?
Well, it's interesting you said that, because obviously we were supposed to record this a couple of weeks ago and something happened and we couldn't do it. So I sort of have been overthinking it, but then I must admit, because I thought about it over the weekend, I thought, no, stop thinking about it and just let it, So I thought about it again this morning, and I think, I mentioned earlier on in my introduction that I've been in the industry for over 25 years, and I think the thing that sort of makes me fizz probably more recently is the energy and passion that I get by tapping into the global L&D community. I have been around a long time. I've got quite a lot of connections, etc. And I love seeing what individuals can do when they can talk across borders, when they can share experiences, when they're collaborating. And I love being part of that sort of that mix. I love being part of the magic when
Yeah, yeah,
conversations happen. And it goes back to what you said a little bit earlier on. Conversations happen, things spark, you get inspiration. And I think that's one of the things that sort of really, helps get me up in the morning thinking, right, I know I've got a conversation with X, Y, and Z today. Who can I connect them with? Who do I know
yeah.
that's worked on something they have, or that can share their experience? And being part of that overall community, I think, is really powerful. And the thing that I've learned over the years is the L&D community is incredibly generous with sharing experiences and their passion, etc. And I think some of it comes from the fact that, especially nowadays, so many L&D professionals are working remotely. They're
Yeah.
not sitting in an office. They can't just do that, turn around and say to a colleague, "What do you think?" Being able to have that external community and that validation, I find that really quite exciting, to be honest.
I can completely empathize with that because in my own mind, I always think I'm I'm not an expert at anything, but what I'm really good at is finding
Yeah,
people to put them together. And I always say it's absolutely fine
yeah,
not to know,
yeah,
because the gift that you've got and that I feel passionately about is finding the people in the room that go, I really think you ought to speak to so and so, because they'll be able to help you.
yeah. And I think for me, that's one of the things that I learned years ago, was that you can't possibly know everything about everything. But what you can know is little bits of nuggets or chunks of information that you can
Yeah,
then connect the dots and think, okay, you're looking to talk about this, that, or other. I know that somebody over here has done something very similar. Let
yeah,
me just make that introduction. You go away and then have those conversations. And knowing that I've been able to be, I suppose, a small part of that,
yeah,
or that catalyst,
yeah.
is really quite, is really quite exciting. And knowing that the two people can get together and what conversations can go from there is,
I know.
up to them.
And you get a feel for like who's going to work together,
Yes,
who's
you
going
do.
to connect with each other. You get an immediate feel to go, oh, I know who's going to, who's going to really work with you, who's
Yeah.
going to, you're really going to love them. That sort of feeling.
Yeah. And sometimes, the thing that I find really interesting is it sometimes can be within the same organization.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got a large organization, you can have 2 or 3 people working on the same thing, but they don't
They
actually
never know.
they
Yeah.
don't know each other. They don't know what they don't know. And
Yeah.
often by me just having those conversations can make such a difference by just introducing those people to each other.
It's so funny you say that because we very often have said we are the catalyst as an external partner. We're the catalyst to helping people internally in large organisations
Yeah,
discover what they're doing.
yeah,
Very often you find that they're working on very similar projects but have never spoken to one another,
yeah,
and you just sort of drop it in to go, have you spoke to Claire or have you spoke to
yeah,
John on this? And they go, who's that then? Well, that's your colleague,
yeah,
that works in the same business. They're also working on a solution.
yeah,
Oh no.
yeah.
And like you say, the sort of you've just sparked a bit of interest in that topic.
Absolutely. I think whether it's happening more now because people are working more remotely, I don't know. But I
Yeah.
think it's sort, if people often are so engrossed in what they're doing, they don't have that time to look outside and think, okay, who else is doing X, Y, or Z?
Yeah. So what was the last time then that by getting people together or engaging in the community, did you get a nugget of information that you go, why do I not know this?
Well, that's interesting. That's, well, I tell you what it was. I was looking at something in Hive community platform the other day, and we were talking about, there was a conversation going on about, as Easter was coming up, recommendations for books to read. And I always think, I'm pretty clued up on who's written what or whatever. And somebody put a publication in there that I thought, why do I not know that person wrote? I've heard the title before, but I
Right.
didn't realise it was that person. I didn't realise it was about that particular subject. And of course, I then went off to look at that. So that sharing of information by that person in the community,
Yeah.
that piece of interest in me to go away and think, oh yeah, I need to do it. It also just reminds you, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I do like a good book recommendation. I have to say, I'm more of an Audible listener rather
Are
than
you?
pick. Yeah, yeah. I think I don't know. I can't sit down long enough, I don't think, to sort of go through a book, and I have to do some work and have it listening in the background. And then all of a sudden, I'll hear a nugget of information that I have to sort of tap down.
Yeah, yeah.
But I suppose everyone's different, aren't they?
I'm,
Some
I'm sort
people.
of old school. I like having a physical book. I have a pen or a pencil handy, and I'm a sort of scribble in the board
Okay.
person. And I love going back. I was doing some tidying up the other day and moving some of my books in my office, and I took a couple of books out and I started going through them, and I was spending more time reading the notes of what I've written. That something had reminded me of, so I quite like that, having that sort of thing there and all my jottings and that sort of stuff.
I think my challenge is I always blame this on the fact that I'm left-handed and I scrawl. So even if I scrawled something, I would never be able to read my own handwriting. So I end up having to type it in on the keyboard actually.
Yeah.
But that's an excuse I use just not to write anything and just type. What was the book recommendation then?
God, now you've asked me. I will come back to you. It'll come back to me in a minute. It will come back to me. I can't remember off the top of my head. It will come back to me.
I had I can't remember the title, but I had a great referral from Hor Amin about like when you start your own business, you've basically got these three traits going on in your own head: the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician.
Ah,
And it's really trying to balance out each of those behaviors in your own head. The technician wants to fight against the entrepreneur to go, no, there's
yeah,
a process to that. And the entrepreneur says, I don't care about that. I just want to get on with it. And it's that internal battle in your own head
yeah, yeah,
to go, how do we manage these different personalities going on?
yeah, yeah. Interesting.
So how, just talking about the hive as well, so that must be gold dust to you then if you think I love being engaged in community and a learning and development community, and then you've got the hive that pulls all those community members together.
Yeah, yeah.
That must get you out of bed each day, right? If that's your.
It does. It's seeing those conversations happening in real time because, it's okay to have something like, LinkedIn, which is quite, what word shall I use? Quite pedestrian.
Okay.
Whereas something like an online community that we have with Hive and stuff, it really is immediate, and you can
Yeah.
see someone posting something, just for an example, I posted the other day, oh yeah, I'm going to go to Learning Tech next week. Within 10 or 15 minutes, you've got 5 or 6 people coming back and saying,
Yeah.
yeah, we're going to be there. Or, has anybody done, experience of, a particular thing, like I mentioned, the publications and stuff.
Yeah.
And getting that instant, so it doesn't always have to be instant, but
No.
having that immediacy. And I suppose also, one of the things that I'm really passionate about as well is being really inclusive. And it's L&D sometimes can be quite exclusive, whereby you might have a group of heads of learning, you might have people that are starting off in an industry. And one of the things that I like about what we created is it's very much inclusive. So
Yeah.
you could be somebody starting out in your career, pop something on there as a question, and you might get the CLO of a global organization coming back and saying, yes, I'll have a conversation with you. And those sorts of things to me are really exciting. I think, oh yeah, that person can have a really good conversation with that person.
Yeah.
Normally they probably would never, ever
No.
have connected.
I think it does depend on the environment that you've not grown up in, that's the wrong word, but your experience of the environment, because a lot of corporate organizations are still very
Oh
hierarchical.
yeah, yeah.
And so you think, oh, I can't possibly speak to that person because they've got this title. I'm just thinking, if you can not anonymize, but if you got rid of the word job title and just said what's your specialism, then most people would just be L&D or people or human, I love humans and this is what I'm interested in.
Absolutely.
And then it really wouldn't matter about those barriers at all, because you just say, oh, so am I, I'm into that.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny because I had an instance a couple of months ago where somebody contacted me and said, Michael, is there anybody you know that you can put me in touch with to talk about X, Y, or Z? And I thought about it and I reached out to that person, obviously GDPR and all those sorts of things. And when I went back to the person and said, just to let you know, this person is happy to have a conversation. And they said, no, 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 I shouldn't. Does that person really want to speak to me? I'm only this. And I said, what this person just wants to do is to help you and have a conversation. It doesn't matter that they are, the global CLO of wherever it was. They just wants to help and have a conversation. That goes back to what I said earlier on about I find the L&D community genuinely so passionate and happy to share information with each other.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I balance off that, because again, I've experienced that about job titles and, hierarchies and being locked off to conversations. But I tend to just look at people and go, are they a nice person? Or are they not a very nice person? And actually, it doesn't help my thought of mind if I'm engaging too much with, not very nice people. Now, that's my own measure and balance. And so if you said to me, well, what denotes a not very nice person? I probably couldn't tell you. I get a feeling around people, but I sort of sanitize it about, how long have they been in a role? What's their job title? What's their background? It's just, are they a nice person? Do I, have I got a common interest there? And if so, let's have a chat.
Have a conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I quite like that, but I can see why people are put off by, well, I couldn't possibly have that chat, because maybe that's their lived experience of, someone going, you can't talk to them, not in this organization.
Yeah. Well, we are brought up, aren't we? We were, probably years ago, to think, well, actually, you shouldn't speak to that person. I don't know about you, but I was brought up, don't speak until you're spoken to type thing. And it was that sort of thing. So I can see where people, where it comes from.
That's why I was never welcomed into these parties, because I just spoke whenever and I was really curious. And I was like, oh, he doesn't fit the norm, the social norm. He's broken it. I was always curious about, well, why can't I talk? I've got something that I want to ask and, I've got something I want to say. I'm really sort of curious about this.
Yeah.
I have to say as well, like when you say, the L&D community are generous in their actions, their thoughts, the ideas that they give away. Again, I just think that's like, most people want to support other people, don't they? If you see another person that is sort of trying to work a way through stuff and you think, oh, I can help them do that. I might not have the solution, but I can help them.
Yeah.
Then I just think that's it should be most people's default to go, that someone in need there, I want to help. L&D and HR folk more so, because they're connected with humans.
Exactly.
But I mean, and it's great to see that, isn't it? When people just go, well, it doesn't matter what, the social norm here is I shouldn't talk to you because you're a competitor and you're in a different business or whatever it is. You go, I don't care about that. Let's just help.
Let's just have a conversation.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I enjoy seeing all that.
Yeah.
And so the other question that I asked you was, what do you think your superpower is? Or what do other people think your superpower is?
Well, it's interesting because anyone would think we'd planned this, and we didn't talk beforehand. I think it is, for me, it is that me having genuine curiosity to try and, to talk to people and, helping bring people together. And I think I was thinking about it beforehand and thinking, well, why am I so curious? And, when I was younger, as I say, I was brought up to be, you don't talk until you're spoken to, and children or whatever should be seen and not heard. And that always
Yeah.
stuck in my head. And probably some people know this, but in mid-20s, I went to drama school and trained to be an actor. And I acted in the West End and blah, 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 blah. And one of the things that always stuck with me when I was training at drama school was, and it was a very famous, she's now not long passed away, but passed away. One of the original Avengers, who was one of my tutors, said to me, acting is reacting. And ever since she said that, and she used to say it quite a lot, that stuck in my head. And I thought, okay, what I should be doing when I'm having a conversation with someone is reacting to what they're actually saying to me. And when I look at what a lot of people do, is, they'll have a conversation and you can see in their eyes that they're crafting their next question halfway through what you're actually talking about.
Yeah.
So I really genuinely try when I'm having conversations with people is just to go with the conversation, not pre-plan where I want it to go, and just react to what they're actually saying, not where I want something to go. And I
Yeah.
think that's helped me really understand what individuals within the profession are looking for, and also within my sort of broader outside life of, just having a conversation, going into it without any preconceived ideas and reacting to what they're saying in the moment.
Yeah. And I suppose it's the difference between like just telling a story, or listening to someone's story and then, asking about that. And, it's a similar sort of thing, isn't it? That most of a conversation should be listening and then interjecting with, further questions or further ideas or support around that. But it's, a conversation is a two-way thing, but it's really fundamentally about me listening to you and then trying to probe around that.
It is. And I look back years ago and I remember watching an interview with Michael Parkinson. And somebody said, and Michael Parkinson was being interviewed.
Oh, really?
And they said to Michael Parkinson, what's the best question you've ever asked? And he just looked at the camera and just raised his eyebrows, just paused for a few minutes to let someone continue to talk. And I just thought that I just find that so powerful, because people are so frightened when having a conversation of any space and and it being silent. Let people think about what they want to say and what have you. And I can say, it goes back to what I was saying before. It's all about reacting to what's been said. Give someone the space to do it. And one of the things that I sort of changed a quote from a book that I read years ago called Matchmaker by Thornton Wilder. And I always think of the quote, I say I'm changing his actual quote. I've changed one word. I always look at curiosity is like manure. It should be spread around, encouraging young things to grow.
Right.
And that's the way I think with curiosity, not saying making the young things grow, but just being curious about something, give someone the chance to talk and explain.
Yeah. And it percolates so many different ideas around that as well, doesn't it? And I think if it is just one way conversation, it is just a download of what's in your head, rather than how do we get together to create, imagination, curiosity, new ideas, because that's a two-way. Well, it's multifaceted, isn't it? It's about, and sometimes I'm a victim of this. My head starts going at 100 mile an hour based on a conversation, and I want to get something out to go, this is what's in my head. Can I talk about this? And you're right. And sometimes then in the conversation, that other person needs to, perhaps recognise, right, I need to give them space, get it out. Then I'll sit back and go, right, I need to give you space now to try and think about what I've said and give me some, reference back, some feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because when I think you sometimes you talk to salespeople, and salespeople just want it to be a complete. I've got all this information.
Download. Yeah,
to give you all this without sort of sitting back and thinking, okay, let's just have a conversation.
Well, that sort of reminds me of what's going to happen next week at Learn Tech, where it's just a barrage of AI possibilities. And can someone just listen to what my challenges are?
Yeah, because I suppose they're told, well, you're going onto a stand.
Yeah,
you've got something to talk about. You're going to talk about it. Come what?
I know.
And there's no. So, I don't know about you, but so many times I've heard people say they go to things like those events, and it's just where do they start? And I think so much of it is because they've gone with their idea of what they want to talk about. They go to somebody on a stand, and the stand have been told, right, you need to tell people about this.
Yeah.
And that's what they go for.
Yeah. And nobody said give people space to articulate and you to, engage in that conversation.
No. And I know whenever I go to exhibitions and things, and someone will often, if I go to a stand or whatever, I'll just start with, I'll just go up to somebody on the stand and say, okay, so just tell me what you do then.
Yeah.
It sort of throws them because they've got a script in their head of what they've
got
to say. And I just want to, just tell me, what do you do?
Yeah, I'm curious.
I'm just.
That's when we think back to Hive and LPI as well, that's the difference between a community, and that's why people are happy to engage in conversation, to give information out, give information away. That's the difference between a rational community that has got no agenda other than we're in this together.
Absolutely.
Rather than a sales event where there's sort of an underlying agenda there. You want to sell to me, and actually it's really good to think about conversations that you have every day at work. Is this going down a sales avenue, or am I trying to create an engaged community here? And because the community will have much richer conversations.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's one of the things I'm really enjoying in the community is seeing those conversations and people being able to have those in that that space.
And so I'm a member of that community, right? But I want almost to see people as well to go, you're that person in the community. So I'm thinking at the next Learning Live or Learning Live networks that there's a section to go, have a coffee with other community members. And I can go, I can see them. I know them.
I know who it is now. Yes.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that's what it's all about. My job title is Global Head of Community. You think, well, actually, what does that mean? Well, does it mean it's online? Does it mean face-to-face? But to me, it's just all about encouraging conversations wherever they are.
That's it. Maybe you should rename it Global Head of Conversation. And so when someone says, what have you been doing this week? Well, I've been chatting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. What a fabulous conversation. And on that note, what an amazing chat we've had.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me. And really enjoyed it. It's been interesting having those, throw around some ideas as well. And I'm going to go and look at the voice thing as well.
I'll have a look at that. If people want to connect with you or find out more about what you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
They could just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think I'm about the only Michael Strawbridge on there. Feel free, and I'm more than happy to connect.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
This has been mindboost Moments. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to hear more, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. And if you want to learn how mindboost can really add feeling and emotion to learning experiences within your business, check out our website at mindboostlearning.com.